Facebook. But let's talk
Okay.
about Twitter because I think actually Twitter sort of epitomizes this in the news story that you pulled today.
Yeah, so Twitter in the news because it's saying it will ban deep fakes and other manipulated media that could cause quote unquote serious harm. And who
Yeah.
defines serious harm, Matt?
So,
Sounds like Google employees.
all right. So I want to do. So I saw this story, and that's immediately what I attached myself to. Someone is defining serious harm. Okay. So
Humans.
exactly. So exactly like in Iowa, where the humans had problems with the technology, and the technology didn't understand how humans work. Twitter is showing that it doesn't understand how humans work, and simultaneously saying, well, we'll protect humans from themselves by defining what serious harm may be. So the question I asked myself when I saw that
Yeah.
is, who does that defining, right?
Who's right? Who's in charge at Twitter? Yeah.
So you think of like Jack Dorsey, but Jack Dorsey has a board. They're a publicly held company, and I know we talk a lot about boards here, but the point of the
As we
board
should.
is it's full of people. And here's what I found. All right.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is not a deep dive so much as a cursory look. If you like scrape the surface, this is how
Okay.
obvious it was.
I get in there.
So Dorsey's on the board, but 4 of the 8 board members who aren't Dorsey are actually all from Google.
All right, well, hold on. Let's start at the top here. So Dorsey does not control this company, right? Unlike Zuck. So he
Correct.
he only owns like what, like 2 or 3% of the vote.
Correct.
He's only the CEO in the sense that he's not also the chair of the board. So it seems like there's more of a democracy going on Twitter,
It
right?
does. It's because you can, if you're an investor in Twitter, you can vote on this board.
Yeah.
However,
And if
there
you're Scott Galloway, you can write letters saying that Jack Dorsey should resign.
exactly, and but those letters actually should or could have an effect. That
Right.
is, if you understand the nuances that they've put in place to protect their board and how the board was constructed. Because, like Boeing, and this isn't Boeing level kind of crap, but like Boeing, I could draw this back to one dude potentially. And guess what
Really?
committee he was on?
Just tell me.
A guy named David Rosenblatt
Oh, that's not who I thought you were going to say. Okay.
is he's been on the nominating committee of Twitter since at least 2012
Which is
as
probably the
IPO.
whole life of the company. Yeah.
He was a founder of DoubleClick. If you remember DoubleClick, they were like that terrible source of internet advertising since like 1997. They were like,
Terrible for us, but probably good for
oh, it
somebody.
was great. It was great. Well, Google ended up buying DoubleClick.
Okay, so good
Um,
for yeah.
and so Rosenblatt became a Google employee for a little while.
Speaking of Google,
And speaking of Google, so they're the chair of the board
yeah,
of
the
Twitter.
executive chair. So he's an employee of the company.
Yeah, you have to explain this in a second. I'm gonna do the dumb version, which is to say the chair of the board of Twitter is a guy who was the 11th employee of Google, right? So,
Yeah, somebody who I think made about a $500 million from Google. That's what I'm guessing.
Rosenblatt is on the nominating committee forever. He actually overlaps and potentially, you don't know if he brought him in, but he overlaps working with this guy Omid, who's the chair of the board now at Twitter. So now they're both on the board together. Now Omid is an executive chairman. So explain what that is because it's kind of hard for me to understand.
Okay, so it, essentially it's an employee of the company. It's not an independent person. So it's someone who gets paid by Twitter. He's an employee of the company. So he has every right to have meetings with Jack Dorsey, and Jack Dorsey can set the meeting agendas if he want and whatever. I mean, he's controlled by the company. He's not independent of anything.
So you have a situation where the chair of the board, who's supposed to lead the board, is basically a part of the company. He came from Google, was the 11th employee of Google, along with David Rosenblatt, who's on the nominating committee. Rosenblatt goes on to chair the nominating committee and bring in 2 more board members, ex-Google employees, all of whom actually overlapped working at Google. So Rosenblatt, Omid, the chair of the executive chair of the board, and the 2 other board members all overlapped in their time at Google. I don't know if they worked together, like they weren't on the same team or anything, but they all overlap. They were at Google
It-
at the same
yeah,
time.
it represents the same corporate experience, right? I mean, it's the same vision, I guess.
So, in fairness to Twitter, 50% of the board is like fairly diversified. They have a Nigerian born executive who happens to be a woman, and having a black woman on your board is like, it's like what? The like being
Un
like catching a leprechaun. It's like, does that happen?
Unzuckian? I don't know.
But they also happen to have the CEO of BET, who also happens
Okay.
to be an African American woman. So they have two black women on the board from
Hmm.
different walks of life. The other 50% of the board is actually fairly well diversified. But here's the problem, right? Because
Yeah.
50% of the board effectively comes from Google. They're one
Yeah.
viewpoint
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the world, a tech
Yeah.
viewpoint of the world. To bring it back to what we're talking about, which is understanding how humans interact with technology and how humans look to technology to save them, and technology often is built by humans who fail them, right? So there's
Yeah,
this,
and Google has all of these same problems. I mean,
every one of them.
especially at YouTube, just so many of these serious harm problems.
And layer on the fact that the board is a classified board without getting too arcane. You explained this to me pretty simply. It just means directors are assigned different classes. It's like graduating classes, and every 3 years, a certain amount of them come up for vote. So you can't go in as an investor and say, "What? You know what? This board sucks. I'm voting you all out." You can only do it in this kind of
Over a
staggered,
3-year period. Yeah.
crappy way. And there's no proxy access, meaning investors actually can't nominate their own board members. So there's all these kind of like protections in place to protect the board members,
Yeah,
50% of whom
pretty
are from
shrewd.
Google.
I'd say it's pretty shrewd from Jack Dorsey. The other weird thing about the executive chair that we dug into a lot is that he doesn't really make much money. He doesn't need the money. His value is, according to the like places like Forbes, is about $2 billion. He got a crap load of options to join Jack Dorsey, and he really just seems there as kind of Jack Dorsey's puppet, I guess, and maybe as the leader of the Googlers.
I mean, well, here's that's kind of the question to me. Okay, so we
Yeah.
are looking to Twitter. This is on the back of Twitter talking about they will decide what serious harm which deepfakes cause serious harm, right? They're in charge of deciding that for you, the consumer.
Yeah.
That includes, they actually said they would not have removed under this policy the altered video of Nancy Pelosi when she was stuttering because it didn't qualify as serious harm.
Yeah, I think Facebook said the same thing for some reason.
Now you've got Facebook, who effectively tells you what is and is not a lie, or refuses to tell you when something is a lie and they know it. They let you decide.
Yeah.
And now you have, and they're having secret meetings with the Trump administration, and
Yeah.
you have Twitter, whose effective revenue stream is the Trump administration, giving you constant, fiery rhetoric out of the White House, on top of the fact that their board is constructed of ex-Google employees, the majority of them. Jack Dorsey's on his way to Africa next year, leaving the board in charge. So it's these people who are going to make decisions about the company more or less on a regular basis, considering that one of them is actually an employee of the company. And the Iowa caucus happens and tech fails us. We're sitting here left wondering, how does tech fail so much? Well, maybe it's the humans behind the technology that are the reason tech is failing us humans.
Yeah. Let's end there because I want to move on to Tesla. But I think from my perspective, the point once again is we leave tech in control of regulating itself. Like it's always the same story.
And the people regulating tech are the nominating committees of boards, which are made up of all
Well, that's
friends.
what I'm saying. It's tech.
Unbelievable.
It's tech looking at tech, looking at tech, looking at tech, making decisions about tech and tech.